Welcome back to the Centered on Buffalo podcast. This week we are joined by my broadcast partner, our sideline reporter, Sal Capaccio, on those game day broadcasts. You can also find Sal on WGR. He writes for WGR550.com. He's all over the place. Follow him on social media. He's a great follow, and he always brings the energy on this show. And I'm excited to dig in on the NFL draft and especially how it pertains to the Bills. We're going to talk about some current topics. We're going to talk about Trey White coming back to the Bills and what that means. And we're going to have some fun on this one. Thank you to everyone who's been tuning in lately. We've had some great episodes. We did a draft podcast last week with Chris Trapasso. We've had Mitch Morris on lately. Coming up, we're going to have Sean McDermott on the podcast and some other Bills players. So make sure you're subscribed. And thank you to everyone who has subscribed. Leave a comment, like, review, share it on social media. We appreciate you all. Enjoy the podcast.
Hit us up on all social media at The Buffalo Pod.
Sal, welcome back on the podcast, brother.
Thanks for having me. Always good to talk to you. And congratulations. I mean, your second hole in one. I've never had one. I've been within a foot a couple of times in my life. It's never happened, so congratulations.
Yeah, I had been close throughout my lifetime. I got one about 13 months ago. I texted a buddy of mine, and I don't even know if he said congrats. He just said, hey, now they come in waves. And so after I got it, he was one of the first people I texted, and I said, hey, you're right. They do come in waves, and sent him a picture with the finger up. So that was a fun one. It was fun celebrating that last weekend, and it's like anything in life. You know, they're not going to come around too often. It might be my last ever, so we got to celebrate appropriately. So that was pretty awesome to celebrate. But let's hop in. Do you have any specific plans for the draft coming up this weekend?
Yes, I'll be covering it down at the media room at One Bills Drive. I mean, it's a long Thursday night. It's a long Friday night. It's a long all day Saturday. So I might as well basically just get a cot, and we all might as well, not just me, but anybody who covers the team on the beat might as well be, sleeping there, because it really is a long night. I think last year, because the Bills traded out of the first round and we had to wait the entire first round, I think Matt Bove, we did our Always Game Day in Buffalo podcast maybe about 12:31 a.m. We started it. And then we went home after that. And then the next night you do the same thing. And it turns out about the same thing the next night. And then all day Saturday, it starts at noon and we're there until 7, 8 o'clock. Shout out to the Bills PR staff. They feed us very well throughout the 3 days.
Was it wings, pizza?
Yeah, they mix it up. It's wings and pizza, it's subs, and it's what else they do? Some Greek, so yeah, for sure. Some pita and all that and rice, and so they do everything. So, it's they do a good job, but that's my plan, and that's what I'll be doing again this year. People ask me all the time, Eric. One of the biggest questions I get is, "Hey, do you go to the draft? Do you go to the draft?" Now, I have been to 2 NFL drafts, but that was a long time ago when I wasn't in this role. No, and the reason is nothing really happens at the draft other than the player getting drafted.
Right.
Everything is in Buffalo. Brandon Beane and his staff are in Buffalo. The war room is in Buffalo. We don't hear from anybody until then. When you got drafted, you came to Buffalo, right? That's what happens. So yes, it's good for TV. Like I understand why a TV station would go and get video of a guy getting drafted, and maybe you get a soundbite from him if he's at the draft, which you don't know if he's going to be.
Right.
From there, though, that's why I don't go to the draft and why most people who cover the team don't go to the draft.
What was the reaction last year when the Bills traded out of their draft choice in the first round?
Well, there were two reactions. First was, oh, the Bills have traded. Not a surprise. Then it was, they've traded with the Chiefs. That became the reaction. It wasn't about the trade. It was about who they traded with at that point. And it was a big deal, obviously, in the room. People were, and I'm following social media, and of course they're getting hammered for it. I can't believe they did this again. And locally, nationally, especially, I can't believe it. The Patrick Mahomes trade and all that. I mean, aside from the fact that the Bills drafted Josh Allen a year later after trading with the Patrick Mahomes trade and got Tre'Davious White, I understand what happened on the Chiefs side, but the Bills still did their thing over the next year and worked out really well for them. So the reaction was really about that. It was about who they traded with, not that the fact that they traded, but from a reporter standpoint, being there, we kind of knew, okay, it's a longer night. And then they traded again, Eric. Remember, they traded down again.
Yep.
They traded out of the first round. And look, I mean, we don't know how these things are going to go. I don't really care. I have a great job. I always say, hey, I'm covering football for a living, but there are definitely people who are like, I can't believe I stayed here all night and they're not going to make a trade. And I'm like, whatever, dude, you talk about football for a living.
I'll say this, it's not on me to report an up-to-date moment, like moment by moment. So there's been drafts where I have gone to bed. Now, last year I did stay up for the entire first round. And I mean, obviously, I it didn't affect me much. I was excited to see what the Bills were going to do after that, but yes, I regretted staying up for that one. And I'm an early riser, so if I go to bed late, I'm still waking up sometime between probably 4:30 and 5:45. So sacrifice some sleep, but it's all good. There's a lot of people in this industry that sleep a lot less than I do, so that's okay. You brought up Tre'Davious White. He's back with the Bills. What's your opinion on the Bills bringing back Trey White?
Well, a couple different things about it. First of all, love it for Trey. I will tell you, and I've shared the story in the radio, so it's fine. But last year against the Ravens, you and I, we called the game against Baltimore, and before the game, I saw Trey, and it was just awesome. And he was just all hugs and smiles and saying hello to me and other media members too. But it was just really cool to catch up with him about the family. After the game, I want to be respectful because their season just ended, right? No doubt. But we were walking up the tunnel, and I said, "Hey, I know you're going to be a free agent. What would you ever think about coming back here?" And I kind of said it tongue in cheek. I just want to see. And he looked at me and said, "Oh, I definitely want to." He said, "I've
Oh,
already talked to people and let them know I want to come back here." And at that moment, it's kind of started me thinking, I wonder if the Bills would do that. I know he wants to. I wonder if the Bills would do that. Now we get down the road. The Bills trade Kyer Elam. We don't know what they're going to do with Russell Douglas. Here comes Dane Jackson. And then I had heard when I was at the owners' meetings, the Bills were definitely poking around some veteran corners. Trey was one of the names I'd heard. I had heard Stephon Gilmore's name. They're poking around there. Kendall Fuller's name. Just some guys. But Trey was one of the names I heard. Wasn't a total surprise to me, but it really got me going, wow, like this could happen. I know he wants to. Now, if the Bills want to and are looking at it, let's see if this is a match. Sure enough, it was. And I love it for Trey. I love it for the Bills organization to have a guy like him come back. Now, what does it mean on the field? Eric, it doesn't really move my needle on what they're going to do in the first round or second round or third round on day 1 or 2, I should say, because while I think that this really helps the floor of the depth at corner, I don't know. None of us know if Tre'Davious White could ever recapture being a full-time starter. And I don't think you can bank on that. I think you have to go into this draft still with an open mind that, and I believe the Bills do, that they're going to have to still draft somebody pretty early in this draft that might be able to wind up being a starter. But I do think it gives them a bit of a bridge to not have to reach or rush it.
no, I agree 100%. He's also going to be great in that room because of what he's done on the field. Even if he's not in a full-time starter role, he's going to have an incredible voice in that room because if they want to, they can put up all the Trey White highlights they want to playing in this system. And so he'll have a voice in that room, be able to help out everybody throughout that room, even help out a Christian Benford. I know he just got extended,
Yeah.
but he's still young in his career. And the Bills don't necessarily play like a boundary in a field corner and this and that. But, at this point, Christian Benford's a premier corner in this league. He could play the field. And so you have the boundary, which is the smaller end of the field. You don't have to be quite as fast. He's also another year removed from that Achilles injury. So I'm excited to see, what he's still got left in the tank, and bringing a guy like that back into the locker room is never going to be a bad thing. You also didn't sign a massive deal, so it doesn't compromise any future plans. But I'm excited about it. And I said the exact same thing. It raises the floor. If there's injuries, he's a guy that you can rely on to come in a game. And who knows? Maybe he's getting healthier. Maybe,
Yeah.
at this point, getting further and further removed from those injuries and not having played a ton these last few years. Maybe he still does have some left in the tank where he can go out and turn back the clock a little bit. All right.
Well,
Let's
hold on. And I'll
go
say
ahead.
this. I think one of the things that I think attracted the Bills to Tre'Davious, from what I've heard, is they watched his year last year and his arc kind of go up. Now, let's remember, in LA, he was a healthy scratch, Eric, a few times.
Yeah.
Like, it did not work out for him in LA. That's why they moved on from him and went to Baltimore. From the way I understand it, the Bills kind of liked the way he was in Baltimore and kind of was on a nice arc. And like I said, a trajectory that gave them a sense of, okay, he's getting back. Doesn't mean he's going to be 2019 All-Pro Trey White, but I think comfortable with what you're getting here in the player. And of course, the system truly matters right there. But I will also say it's really interesting. This isn't a player that has been in the league a long time. He's put his time in Joey Bosa, Von Miller, who's never been here. He's 1 year removed. He was already teammates with Christian Benford, Dane Jackson, Jamarcus Ingram, Taron Johnson, Taylor Rapp, Damar Hamlin, Cam Lewis, right? I mean, he's already been here. He knows these guys. So to your point about the room is 100% right. And I think the comfortability of not having to be a new guy in the room, if that makes sense.
Yeah. And one guy that like no one's saying, everyone's saying, okay, maybe Dane Jackson can fill in, maybe Tre'Davious White can fill in. And I want to make this more about the draft than just simply the cornerback position. But Jamarcus Ingram has played some really good football in his career. He's gotten better each and every season. It wouldn't surprise me to see him go out there and compete for a starting role, whether it's with a rookie or whether it's with Dane Jackson or Tre'Davious White. Let's take a break to hear from one of our sponsors, and that's Dano's Seasoning. They just released a new one. It's the lime green. It's chili lime. Go check that out. It's one of my favorites that they released. They also got the new seasonings out now. Love those as well. The jalapeno one, the red pepper flakes mixed in with the Parmesan cheese in there. It's killer. Go check those out at danosseasoning.com or retail store near you. Yum, yum. Get you some. All right, let's turn the page a little bit now, and let's focus more on this upcoming draft here. All right, so Bills sit at number 30. We know with Brandon Beane, that doesn't necessarily mean they're going to be picking at 30. They could move up, they could move back. We'll see how that all shakes out. But if the Bills stay put at 30, is there anybody that you're just desperately hoping falls to the Bills at that pick?
Yeah, I would say the guy I would hope falls there would be Derek Harmon, the defensive tackle from Oregon. I really like Derek Harmon for the player he is, and I really like him for the fit that he would be for what the Bills need. I think the Bills need a true one technique with the ability to move around. And what I mean by that, and we always say these things, and I want people to understand, I've been trying to do this a little bit more so people understand. Sometimes we get lost in the weeds of football jargon, right? One technique is a guy who plays mainly over the guard, shade of the guard by the center, right? You could speak to this, but it's a guy that's more closer to the actual center of the offensive line. That's more of an anchor. He's more of a nose guard type of player. It's who Daquan Jones is. That allows you to have a guy at the three technique like Ed Oliver, who's a little bit more outside, a little inside shoulder of the tackle, who can basically penetrate a little bit more. Is that the good way to describe it for everybody?
That's a great way of describing it.
Okay, so I just want to make sure everybody understands what I'm saying here, that I think the Bills need a defensive tackle. They want a defensive tackle, but I think there's a specific type that they really need in this defense, which is a bigger, more anchored one technique to allow a guy like Ed Oliver to kind of be the better player that he can be. Now, that being said, I don't think they would shy away from a smaller guy if he's a truly, what they think is a game changer. But I do think they need that type of player. That's Derek Harmon to me. Is what, 330, 325, 330, somewhere in there. This is the type of guy I think that could fit right in. I just don't know if he'll be available at that spot. And I think he goes a little bit earlier. You might have to trade up to get him. And I don't know what that would cost. The Bills have traded up, obviously, 2 times in the last 3 years. Then they traded down last year. But that's the guy, to me, that would be my number one, I really hope he falls guy.
I'm with you on that one. I think Kenneth Grant out of Michigan, also kind of similar in that role, 6'4", 330.
Yep.
Earlier in his career, showed a little bit better pass rush ability. Last year, played at a bigger weight, heavier weight. Wasn't quite as disruptive in the backfield in rushing the passer, but a guy that can keep the interior line off the second level of the defense to allow a Bernard, a Milano, for those guys to get downhill and keep those guys off of them. And I do think that's an area of need on this team, especially with Ogunjobi being out the first 6 games of the year. If they don't draft a defensive tackle fairly early in this draft, they might be playing roster gymnastics, and it might be finding a Jordan Phillips type, a Jefferson type like we saw last year. And look, defensive tackle is a type of position you can fill it with big bodies, and the Bills have plenty of playmakers. Those linebackers make plays in the run game. You can fill that role, but there's a big difference between filling that role and finding a guy that can come in and truly make an impact. And look, when we're prepping as an offensive line and we're looking at the other team's defensive line, there's a lot of D tackles in the league that, no offense, are kind of like a Quentin Jefferson, have a little bit of wiggle to them, can stuff the run at times, but those guys are kind of a dime a dozen. You get some of these first round defensive tackles that got some spark to them, got some explosiveness to them, got some size to them. Okay, now we're going to have to game plan for these guys, and I feel like the Bills are in need of that. I also feel like they need some help on the edge as well, and whether a guy falls there. And then obviously corner is a position that, if you're not re-signing Rasul Douglas from last year, and the indications are we're probably not bringing him back. He's on the wrong side of 30 and slowed down at the end of the season the last couple of years. And so can we find a guy opposite Christian Benford that can be another stud on the outside? And maybe, like I said, maybe it's Jamarcus Ingram. Maybe Trey White turns back the clock. Dane Jackson's played good ball in this system, but I think corner would be in play there as well. And then the opposite end of that, is there any position that you could see maybe the Bills targeting at 30 that you would say, I don't love them going this early at that position group?
Ooh, there's a two way to look at this. Me not loving it versus I don't see them doing it, but you never know. I think that part of it might be safety, where I don't. A lot of people talk about safety. I don't, because I just think that they've already used a second round asset on Cole Bishop. Taylor Rapp's here for 2 more years on a nice contract. I just don't think that there's a spot for him to play right now, and that would be kind of like, okay, what are you doing with that? That's a guy that you're going to have to kind of play in spot duty. It's not going to make as much of an impact right away as a defensive tackle, who, by the way, you're 100% right. They only have 3 really on the roster right now. Zion Logue is the 4th, but he's more of a practice squad guy, right? So you got to have a guy there. Wide receiver might be this spot where I talk about, which is, yeah, I get it. Like, people say they might need another wide receiver. I don't think the Bills feel that. They have the league MVP with the guys he was thrown to last year, right? Like, who's he playing over? Khalil? No. Keon Coleman right now? Probably not. They just gave $9 million a year to Joshua Palmer. So I don't see it. So I think the position here would be, for me, if you say to me, the way you phrased it, could they do something you'd like? I wouldn't love that. Linebacker, off-ball linebacker. Because of the contract that they adjusted with Matt Milano, I think some people believe the Bills could be looking to replace him a year early, which they did with Tremaine Edmonds and Terrell Bernard in the 3rd round. So I totally get that thinking. I just think they already have a guy in Dorian Williams, 2 more years under contract here, who led the team in tackles. Joe Andreessen looked okay. I mean, is he a long-term solution, backup middle linebacker? No, but Terrell Bernard just signed an extension. He's here for 5 more years. So it's not really a place you're going to be looking there in the 1st round. So to me, it would be off-ball linebacker. There are some really good off-ball linebackers. I just don't love the Bills doing that early.
Yeah, I'm with you. I wouldn't love to see that. To me, safety's interesting. If you get a guy that you think's going to come in and be an all-pro, and maybe they didn't love what they saw from Cole Bishop
Right.
last year. I think
Possible.
he's got a high ceiling, but they could, maybe say, I don't know that he's the answer long term. And Taylor Rapp's been dinged up. And okay, so maybe you get a guy that you say, I can't pass on him here. Maybe, what we heard heading into the offseason was, we need a guy to stretch the field horizontally and vertically in the pass game. You find a guy that you think can come in and be an absolute stud. Sure, go take a shot on him. But now you got to be really diligent with those 2nd round picks to be able to fill some needs, some absolute needs on this defense. And where I see those pressing needs are defensive tackle and corner. All right, let's give a quick shout out to Waterboy. Great partner, great friend of the show. We've sent you some of these. Hope you're enjoying those.
I am. I have to tell you, truly. I mean, not even Eric did not ask me to do this. I'm going to say this. I got some Waterboy, and I've never used it, the product. And my wife, Yana, said, oh my God, that's really great for you. Like, because in the morning when you work out, instead of having a coffee, you should probably replenish with this. And I've been doing that, and it's been great for me, actually. So in the morning, I do a VR body combat workout. It's been awesome for me. And then I go in my sauna for 140 to 150 degrees for about 25 minutes. Then I'm sweating and everything. I get out and I have that Waterboy, and it replenishes me, and it's been great.
All right. I love to hear that. All right.
Yeah.
Listeners get 20% off. Use code EWOOD. The links in the show notes. So check that out. Love that endorsement there. All right. Switching gears. At the owners meeting, you asked Pete Gorelli if the Bills are trying to get the NFL draft to come to Buffalo. Can you inform us of what he had to say in regards to that?
Yeah, so Pete Gwelly is the new COO of the team. I shouldn't say new. 1 year ago, he took over basically in March of 2024 of both the Bills and the Sabres. So we did a wide-ranging interview. I did one-on-one with him. I posted the entire transcript and the audio, written and audio form at WGR550.com. If anybody wants to read any of this, because there's so much cool stuff about the arena downtown with the Sabres and, of course, the stadium with the Bills. And with this stadium comes events. And I said, hey, look, I mean, I know we've talked about this before. Would the Bills want to get a draft now that it's rotating? And he said on the record, they have told the NFL, they've made it very clear they have an interest in having the draft at either 28 or 29.
Good.
He believes 29 is more likely due to the work that needs to be done because the stadium's opening in 26 and you have a little bit of time there and some ramp up. He said, I wouldn't rule out 28, but 29, probably is more likely. I think they're very confident they're going to get an NFL draft. We've seen these drafts in these stadiums in other markets, like it's going to be in Green Bay this week. And I don't know. I have to look. I think Green Bay might be doing it in their stadium, but look, when it was in Detroit, it wasn't inside the stadium. When it was in Cleveland, it wasn't in, I think Cleveland had it, right? It wasn't, yeah, it wasn't inside the stadium. You don't have to have it in the stadium, but the stadium could be used for other events during the draft and for other kind of ways to promote it. So I think the question in Buffalo is where it would be in conjunction with using the stadium, but you want to highlight it if that all makes sense. So yes, I think the draft is coming here in either 2028 or 2029. And even Pete Gwelly, the COO of the Buffalo Bills and Sabres, basically gave an indication that he's pretty confident that's going to happen. He also said he's very confident they're going to get an outdoor hockey game soon after that stadium is open. It is the 20th anniversary of the first Winter Classic coming up in 2028. Now, because you can't necessarily predict the NFL schedule and work around that with the NHL, it doesn't have to be Winter Classic, but it could be one of those outdoor series games now because they do a lot of those around the league.
Yeah, that'll be really cool to see that outdoor game in the new Bills Stadium. What all needs to be done? So you said there's
Yeah.
stuff that needs to be done. What all needs to be done to bring the draft to Buffalo, which I've been a huge proponent of. I mean, one of the things, I mean, I post about it every year on social media leading up to the draft. Like, put this draft in Buffalo and watch
Mhm.
the city of Buffalo, watch Western New York show up in just a huge way. What all needs to be done in order to be able to make that viable?
Well, let's remember where Buffalo's located. You're a very short drive. I think one of the best things about living in Buffalo, Eric, is we're a very short drive from so many awesome cities in the
Yep.
Northeast, right? You could literally drive an hour and a half to Toronto, depending on what the traffic is at the border. You could drive 3 hours to Cleveland, 4 hours to Pittsburgh. You can go a half a day to Philly, Boston, New York City, DC. And all those people who are fans of teams, you're going to get a lot of people coming to Buffalo. So to me, it's probably about the accommodations, right? What can we do to make sure everybody coming here, there's enough hotel spaces? They probably want to build up a little bit around the stadium before then to make sure all that's happening. Parking, where are we holding things? That's one thing. One of the things that's happening is in Buffalo, through the Ralph Wilson Foundation, there's some projects going on. And one of those projects is down by the river. When you drive down the Buffalo River in the 190, and this is the West Side, Peace Bridge, I actually live over there, and you see the work that's being done. I think you're probably looking at the landscape of Western New York and how it looks in 28 or 29 and making sure you have everything in place to hold an event like this that the whole country is going to be kind of fixated on for 3 days. Let's remember that. This isn't a one-day event. This isn't a Monday Night Football game. This is a 3-day event that people are coming to your city and enjoying it. So I don't think it's about the stadium per se. I think it's about the work that would probably have to go into making sure Western New York is ready.
That's awesome. And I can't wait for that to happen. And I'm fully confident that they'll make it happen. Roger Goodell, being from Western New York, he understands the passion in that area and how great it would be for the NFL and how much that area will appreciate it and benefit from it. Benefit,
Yeah.
all the businesses that'll get a huge surge over, the 3 days of the draft. But, a lot of people are in Green Bay this entire week
Yeah.
to go there and cover it. And so it'll be huge for the city when that does happen. All right. So Brandon Beane, he takes some criticism for, some first round draft picks that haven't necessarily worked out or maybe not getting some high end talent. Now, to his defense, most of the time he's picking at the end of the first round. So it becomes tougher to find those kind of, automatic plug-in starters. I saw on social media you did a nice breakdown comparing him and Veach in the way
Yes.
that they've drafted, but just focusing on Brandon Beane.
Mhm.
What's your opinion on his ability to draft and what he's done so far through the draft in Buffalo?
Well, I think the reason why I did a comparison with him and Brett Veach is obviously the Bills and Chiefs are linked here through conference and playoff games, and they've been the Bills' biggest rival, and they have Super Bowl championships. But they were both hired the same year, Eric, and they have the same number of drafts. So when I just look at Beane and focus on him, what I've tried to bring to everybody is you have to have a perspective of around the league on if you're going to judge Brandon Beane's draft and say, well, he misses so many times. Well, how many times are other guys missing? Well, he hits all these. Well, how many guys are other guys hitting? That's why I did that. And I think from looking at all of that, I have the same takeaway as I did when I kind of thought about it. And I've always thought about it, which is Brandon Beane is just like any other GM where he's going to have his share of misses. It's going to happen. He's going to have his share of hits. But I think where it's really fallen for me and what I learned from doing this exercise with Matt Bove, I think the floor for Brandon Beane has been very good as far as drafting. That's why this team can plug in guys. And it's not just drafts, it's UDFAs, but the draft too, where guys get drafted, they develop, they're on the practice squad. And when you need them to play, they're kind of ready to play, right? They've done a great job of player development and they've had a real nice floor of, okay, these guys can play and we can use them in our system and we'll develop them when it's time, they can step in. But I think what's lacking is the elite home run talent that he hasn't drafted outside of Josh Allen. And if you want to, I guess Taron Johnson would be for sure. You could make a few guys here, right? Taron Johnson in the 4th round is an unbelievable pick, obviously. There's been some really good picks, though. It's so funny to me that I think this is where it gets lost and people don't have perspective. I get told that DeMar Hamlin in the 6th round and Dane Jackson in the 7th round, oh, yeah, these guys aren't good. Those are great picks for 6th and 7th round picks. Like, oh my gosh, DeMar Hamlin, we all believe, I think you and I are on the same wavelength. Yeah, you'd like more playmaking from DeMar Hamlin. He's not the greatest athlete. Eric, he's a 6th round pick who started 17 games, or we started a whole season for an AFC championship team, and he's been here for four AFC division championships. Dane Jackson played 4 years as a 7th round pick and then signed a second contract with another team in free agency for over $4 million a year. Like, I mean, that's a good pick by Brandon Beane. Those aren't bad picks. They're just not guys that are in the elite stratosphere, but they're 6th and 7th round picks. What you do need, though, is the 1st and 2nd round picks to become those guys who are elite. They haven't had that. Greg Rousseau was a really nice player. He's not a, oh my God, game plan for him every single game type of can't miss talent, right? I mean, he's a really nice player on the roster. So anyway, getting a little of the weeds here the way I'm talking, but I think you get the point. I think the floor for Brandon Beane has been very high, but I think the ceiling's been a little bit lower.
I agree with that. And they've done such a good job picking at the end of the 1st round, end of
Yes.
most rounds, finding talent, find guys that fit, guys like a Spencer Brown and those guys that have become top tier players at their position and not necessarily a 1st round draft pick. Now, if you stay put at pick 30, it just becomes harder and harder to find those guys. There's not many TJ Watts around the league where you find the defensive player of the year that, especially at the pass rusher position that late in the 1st round, but it can happen. And when the Bills are focusing on maybe a defensive tackle this year or a corner where there's not that huge rush on them at the top of the 1st round, that could help maybe them finding an impact player on the defensive side of the football, especially here.
Yeah, and I think Brandon Beane is right when he said this. He's said this many times to us, which is if you take a guy in the 1st round who's not really a 1st round graded guy, it's kind of not fair to him because of the pressure that goes along with being a 1st round talent and the expectations. So that's why you got to be very careful about that as well. And I think this goes to your point about when you're picking that low. Look, I've talked to enough GMs over the years to tell you nobody ever has 31st round graded guys. That just doesn't happen. Drafts have maybe 25 at the most, but generally 22 to 25. 22 is about average. I think 20 to 25 guys who have 1st round grades from GMs and from staff. So when you're picking at 30, you're kind of not picking a guy that normally has a 1st round grade. It's possible someone falls to you that does. There's no doubt about that. And that could happen. Or you got to go up and get him. But if you pick a guy at 30 and he doesn't have what you consider a 1st round grade, nobody sees the board, but fans are like, well, that guy's a 1st round pick and he's not in the field. How come? The team's not going to come out and go, well, he really wasn't a 1st round talent. They're not going to say that to you.
No.
But that might be the truth.
Yeah, you're exactly right. All right. So we've mentioned Josh Allen a couple times. There's that viral video out there of Bills fans' reaction when the Bills drafted Josh Allen in the 1st round. And, they have video of people just flipping out. They're going crazy against the pick of Josh Allen. What was Sal Capaccio's opinion in 2018 when the Bills selected Josh?
I've always taken the approach, and this is where I get in trouble. This is where I get accused of being someone who you never criticize the team. You're such a homer. Look, here's my belief. The people doing this have way more information than me. So I try not to formulate these really hot take opinions of how great or how terrible something is on anything. These guys do all of the work. I don't know. I could have gone. I actually really liked Baker Mayfield that year, to be quite honest with you. I'm not saying I thought that he should be, that he was going to be a Hall of Famer or anything like that, but I liked his game. I'm like,
he might end up being one.
Sure, I guess, right? The way he's playing. I liked Baker that year. I liked Lamar that year, right? I was okay. I think I had the Bills. I mocked the Bills taking Josh Rosen because I thought the Bills would do that given the way the board fell, but who knows, right? My reaction was, okay, they've swung for the fences here. That was my reaction, which is this is either going to be disastrous like so many other quarterback picks over the years, or the Bills know something and have a plan here that people don't probably believe that they can do, and it's going to work out. And that's what happened, right? I mean, they swung for the fences and it worked out. So that was my reaction, which is, all right, they have way more information than me. They've done all this work. not me. I'm not going to say it's a terrible pick or a great pick because I don't know. I'm just going to say this is what they do. And I think that it's either going to be a disaster. I thought that the range of outcomes was way each side of the spectrum with Josh. That's what I thought. And I still think that is probably what was true at the time.
Yeah, you're right. And I did not do nearly as much homework as they did on all the quarterback prospects. And so I'm with you. I trust what they do in those situations. Now, I did have a conversation with Brandon Beane a couple weeks prior to the draft. I was down at the Masters that year and spent time with a number of the uh, top prospect quarterbacks. I also knew Lamar very well coming out of the University of Louisville. And I told Brandon Beane, I said, look, I have no idea about any of these guys' games other than what I saw in highlights and whatnot. But I said, the alpha's Josh Allen. He's the dude that at 21 years old can command a room. He can play beer pong with Peyton Manning and talk a little smack. Like, he is the guy when you put them all in a room. I have no idea how that translates to football, but I know that he could step into an NFL locker room and gravitate an entire locker room, get everyone gravitated towards him. So I had that conversation with Bean, and I was excited about it. And I've messed with Bean over the years. I remember I went
What
to
did
a
he
game.
what did he say when you said that to him? Did he give you an indication that they felt the same way or that they also liked his game on the field or anything like that?
It was text messages, and he said something along the lines of, we love that kid, like,
Okay.
yeah, we've seen the same things. We absolutely love that kid. And so it all worked out. I remember going to a game in 2019, and I saw Bean's two boys walking out of the game with him and Haley, and they were both wearing Josh Allen jerseys, and I'm sitting up there having a beer at a tailgate. I wasn't calling games for the Bills or anything yet. And I said, oh boy, the Beans are all in on Josh Allen. He said, yes, we are. I need this one to work out. And so
Oh yeah.
obviously he did. He's a league MVP and he's had tremendous success. All right, last question. 2009 NFL draft, April 25th. The Bills draft a player out of the University of Louisville, baby face, curly hair, 28th pick overall. What was your opinion of that draft pick at the time?
So that year, I remember specifically saying the Bills really need to get some offensive linemen, and UNA Levitri came in that draft. Like that was
Yep.
a big year for. I remember thinking that. So I don't remember the exact night, but I'm pretty sure this is right. I think I was at a track meet in Florida. I was coaching track at the time, and that's right around the time where a lot of track meets were going on, right? And we'd have Thursday night and Friday night and Saturday track meets because I remember that happened with CJ Spiller too. When was CJ taken? 2010.
Yep.
I remember I was at a track meet when CJ Spiller was taken because I had gone to the ACC championship game in Tampa that previous year. And I remember saying to my wife, I'll get back to your 2009, but I do remember would have been your rookie year, I guess. CJ plays his last year in college. And I remember saying to Yana, we're in Tampa watching him. And I go, Bills never get guys as good as CJ Spiller. They should draft. It'd be great to get a guy like that. I love his game. And sure enough, they drafted him. I was at a track meet. I think I was at a track meet when you got drafted too, if I remember right. And I just remember thinking, okay, like, I mean, I didn't know if you'd play center or guard. The Bills will have a plan for you. And obviously you started at guard, then you transitioned to center. But I remember thinking, okay, they're finally addressing the offensive line. It's not sexy. No offense, Eric Wood. It's not sexy, but
None taken.
they're addressing the offensive line. And I thought going into that year, I knew that they kind of needed to do that.
That was the draft. The Bills had 2 first rounders, 2
Yep.
second rounders. Took a reach on Aaron Maben. Obviously didn't work out, but then me, Levitri, and Jarris Bird all went on to play a pretty long time.
Who
But
was that the year? Did you guys draft a tight end that year? Southern Miss? Who was
Sean
that?
Nelson.
Was that your same year?
Yeah, that was Sean
I
Nelson.
really loved Sean Nelson. I loved him. I remember thinking, oh boy, I'd love the Bills to get Sean Nelson, and then they did.
Yeah, that was Marshawn's cousin.
Yes,
And
yes.
I played with him at the Senior Bowl, and man, he looked the part and
Yeah.
it just didn't work out for him in the league. It doesn't for all guys, but Sean Nelson was a heck of a prospect. But Sal, I hope you have an awesome draft weekend. I'll be texting you a bunch, I'm sure, seeing
Yeah.
your opinions on picks, and look forward to following you throughout the weekend. Thanks for coming on the show. As always, always appreciate it, brother.
You got it, my man. We'll talk this week. I'll send you some pictures of what's in the media room for meals.
Okay, sounds good. I'll be jealous over those meals as I'm sitting on the couch at home.